Um, so I thought we could just quickly. Oh, Maurice, are you able to take notes, or is it going to be held with you on the shared computer?
Right. Since I'm with Jennifer in her office, if you can take notes or someone else can, that would be great.
I can take some notes.
Okay.
I mean, I do anyway, so it's not a big deal.
Thanks, Michael.
Michael, do you mind dropping them into the agenda? If you want to write them, that's fine. But at some point.
Oh, yeah, I'll just do it after first thing.
Here's the link for it again.
Thank you.
So I thought we could just recap from the last meeting. We talked about a lot of things that related to the technology group, so it sounds like that stuff is going to be tabled for a while. We talked about some things with the valuing, that connected with the valuing group, so we'll maybe get an update about that. And then we're going to focus on today's meeting, continuing the conversations on getting youth voice and the access issues. So some of the things that we had left on the table last time, one was the technology access flyer. Amaris, were you able to get together? I know you shared that one resource, but I think we talked about pulling together just like a list of resources.
I did not put together a list of resources, but what I did is I added into our equity working group folder.
Okay.
Just so that we had something to talk about, like something to start with, and like a draft flyer, because so rather than just telling people about like these resources for getting free or low cost technology, there would have to be some information about badges. So
yeah.
So if I don't know if you guys can open up. I think it's within our folder, Equity Working Group folder, and I believe it's called Access and Equity Flyer.
So you guys, I was thinking a little bit about this while I was in Disney World, and I feel like although this is really helpful, in giving the information to our communities about how to receive technology and all that stuff, I feel like we're still making these communities cater to our middle class systems. And if we're really trying to make this universal, I almost feel like we have to come up, and probably you did, and I've just been out of the loop, but I really feel like we have to come up with a system that works with their system versus them working with us. And so what if we just created like, a paper version? I've been working with Jackie. I know you guys got to meet her. Isn't she amazing?
Yeah.
So we're putting together a sheet because for us to roll out the badges this next term, we need something that they can mark off and they can see their growth and they can see, oh, this badge, I'm going to get this if I meet this criteria, and it's a worksheet that they're going to fill out. And so then our STEM facilitator will then have to go back and do the legwork on our computer, in our office. But as far as if we want to do a quick turnaround and really, putting in the badge system, and Jennifer, when you were out at our school, you saw the chaos that goes on.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if you, I put together something like that for Crystal last year.
Oh, nice. Okay. So
it was like a student version of the criteria, so they could check off the things that they'd done and give it to the instructor.
Okay.
So I don't know if you have that.
Okay, yeah, no, I can ask Crystal for that because we call it probably every other second for.
Or I can just put it up on Drive.
Okay, yeah.
Or I
that'd
can
be
just
awesome.
email it to you. Either way, the language probably needs to be modified for younger children.
Okay.
But it might be helpful.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. Yeah, that'd be great.
But one, in terms of that access, you're absolutely right. It was chaos. Um, but the other thing that I know we talked about was sort of thinking a little bit more about this badge by text and
Right.
how that works and how to make it sort of more fun and interactive so that it's, you know, I think a lot of kids have phones. Even if they don't have smartphones and they can't get like the, you know, the web access and the cool badge images and all of that.
Yeah.
And try to correct me if I'm wrong. You know, but at least that's sort of a not as, you know, fancy technology that we could leverage in ways that we're not now.
Right. Yeah. And of course that all depends on like what age group we're working with and stuff like that. So yeah.
that's
So
true.
but yeah, I think of course phones are definitely more accessible. Now for them to use it in school, that's another
That's a whole
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that we just have to be aware of, you know, because they can't, you know, they can't.
Yeah.
And I think there always still has to be some type of connector in the classroom of connecting students back to where these badges are. You know, whether they're getting them via text or they're all online somewhere. There has to be like those sheets that you explained. Like I said, I think there's always going to have to be that when we're working with certain audiences. But at the same time, like knowing that that's one of the things that we're trying to work on. Is just equity with technology, and maybe not everybody is ready to buy the $150 even that computer, even that might still be a big cost for someone. I think that there are some communities that information can be really helpful for.
Yeah.
And that they're not left behind. I mean, their badges are going to just kind of be like loading up somewhere, but they'll never get to see it.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah.
Just across the board. I mean, when we're talking about equity, we're talking about like, at all levels. So. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I didn't mean to say like let's not advertise and let's not help. No, I just wanted like because our programs start next month, and so of course I'm in like panic mode. Like we got to get this out. So. But yeah, no, that's good to reinforce that. Yeah, we're focusing on all levels.
Yeah, I think the point of this resource flyer too that Amaris has started to put together was also to address that. It's not just about the badges, but she has a section on there too about here are some resources if you don't have access to things that you might look into your community. So just providing information. And last time we talked about getting that. I was going to check with our designers once we have some text about putting that into a format, and I think we talked about translating too to different languages. So. But that's probably not something that's going to be ready immediately. That's more of probably a long-term thing. So individual organizations, I think, have to have their own solutions for a while, but it might be a template to use in the future.
And one of the things, so listing the the resources on the flyer, that's simple enough. But I think there has to be some kind of larger conversation about badges, captured on there, just kind of like some bullet points. And I don't know if that was more towards like the valuing working group about. So if we're telling people to access technology to showcase their badges, but there's probably some bullet points or some ideas about like why they should do that, like why are badges important. So I kind of thought that maybe we still bring this topic to the larger group meeting, especially the value group, for those bullet point items, and just kind of get their feedback.
Yeah, that's a good point. We should put that on our list for the valuing group. And a great segue. Michael, did you reached out? I think I saw some emails to the valuing group. Could you update us on where that stands?
Yeah, she actually followed up at the big meeting, and she said that they kind of just also had like a standstill and weren't really sure how to approach that topic, if I remember right. I can't remember what her reasoning for it was. I've left my notes over there, but I think she just said that that they just couldn't figure out how to approach that in their discussion that they were having, and thought maybe it was something that we should all, as like a bigger group, discuss together. But I didn't get an email back from them.
Okay. So this was, if you weren't here at the last meeting, we were talking about giving, like reminding participants years later that they have these things. So they might be pretty young when they're doing project exploration programs, or even, or Chicago Botanical Garden, I think you work with middle schoolers, and so how do we sort of trigger when they're in high school or in college that they have these things they can access as reminders of what they worked on, and like documentation of things that they've done that could help them get a job or get into college. So that was something we were going to talk about with the valuing group, and yeah, you just refreshed my memory, Michael, that they say that it doesn't sound like they're actually attacking that specific issue. I think they're focused more on valuing in the moment rather than future valuing.
Mm-hmm.
So well, I don't know. Oh, go ahead.
Something that we just recently found out, it should have been like a duh, was that on our C-STEMBE that we thought was PE is owned by the Hive. And so I don't know if you guys have the same thing going on with your organization. Maybe like in the C-STEMBE data where we put all the students' information, is there a way to like start putting tabs in so that we can put in like whatever badge they earn? Because then if they go to After School Matters or all these other teen places, and even CPS is using C-STEMBE, when that day comes where we can share data, whenever that is, at least it'll be the information will be there for that student.
I don't know that we're, Jennifer, are you all using C-STEMBE too?
We use C-STEMBE for our After School Matters programs, but we don't use it for other programs. So what that means is some of the Green Youth Farm programs are in C-STEMBE, and then the Urban Garden Lab at 66 Randolph is in C-STEMBE, but that's it. We don't use it for Science First, College First.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think
it's a good idea, though. I think that's a really good idea.
Do you know who's in charge of that program, or who runs that system?
The youth what is it? Natasha, what's the who are the people that run C-STEMBE? Is it the youth service? Who runs C-STEMBE? Yeah, so C-STEMBE is by the Youth Service Network, or who like owns C-STEMBE? No, sorry, I thought we would know over here. Okay, never mind.
That's fine.
I remember seeing like an email too from Cecil about like they just heard that badges will now be on students' school profiles or documents. I'm not sure what that meant.
Really?
It probably means in C-STEMBE because CPS uses. I mean, that's I think how they keep track of all student everything in C-STEMBE. So maybe that's happening, and we just need to figure it out.
So who said that, Amaris?
It's through the through Cecil. So you know how they were sending
Tanae and all of them
the like emails with like lots of information. I just remember one of the lines, and they didn't give a lot of background, but isn't one of our working groups working with I'm not sure, is that no, that's not the technology. Is it one of our working groups working with Cecil on something? Otherwise, I mean,
well, it's a technology group.
It is a technology group, because I mean that could just be an ask about like badges going on student profiles.
And then Natasha and I were going to meet with someone from CPS. Ask Natasha about who we're supposed to meet with that had the big conflict with the meeting.
With the big conflict with the meeting?
We were going to have this person come and meet with us, and I think maybe it was CPS Service Learning. I don't remember. And then we were also, at the same time, we're supposed to have the WebEx, or the working examples tutorial.
And those are the same people that are. Wait, I don't know what I'm asking because she has her headphones on, so I want to be really clear when I ask her to take them off again.
Later, but I thought that they might be able to connect us to C-STEMBE.
Oh, well, I can, if you guys want, I can connect with either Tanae or someone from CSOL and see just what we're,
Uh-oh.
if anybody want to connect with the equity, who is the valuing folks that are doing it?
Potentially valuing would be involved in that, yeah. They might be interested in talking as well.
Okay. Well, I'll talk to people about that if you guys want me to do that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
And we'll sort of see where that goes. And then I know we're going to talk about this more in a little bit, but just as a reference, I dropped in some, moving on to the next thing, dropped in some of the tablet pricing from our last order, and so that's a document in the working group.
Okay, and then what did we request, Maurice, for our the computers and the capital request for budgets? We were going to buy a whole bunch of tablets. Do you remember what kind those were?
Oh, I don't remember.
Because we're requesting upgrades for our science fairs and college fair students, and we're requesting tablets, and off the top of my head, I don't remember, but I can put that information in there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the document I dropped in includes tablets, but also some Acer netbooks and an iPad prices. So.
Okay, cool.
I'm sorry to backtrack, but I just had a thought that because I was thinking about these CPS files, and some people use CitySpan, some people don't. But whatever platform that we're using, if we're working with Chicago public school students, we might be, and wherever we're putting those badges, we might consider also putting in our student CPS ID numbers on that. So at minimally, like everybody, doesn't matter what platform you're using, or doesn't matter what database you're using for your student rosters or their demographic information, as long as we had their ID numbers, and then that can eventually go back to their student files in school.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion, that maybe we should just be using those as identifiers within any system that we have. That is definitely what CSOL is using too.
Do we have those in
I think that's a good idea. One thing to be watchful for, when I was at After School Matters, a lot of parents that don't have documentation or their social security number when they're entering school, CPS has to take them in, and so what they do is put 9999999 for like all their numbers, and then they forget to change it later, and so it really bites them in the butt when they're teenagers trying to graduate high school or trying to get a job with After School Matters, because then like all their numbers are messed up. So just I think it's a really good idea that we do use the CPS numbers, but just be watchful of that.
We should check and make sure that, because that's.
Yeah, and that's really not going to help. I mean, I guess we should also think about it at some point, maybe as a future conversation, but that doesn't really help us in terms of with private school students or children.
No.
And then we're working with other cities too. So, but yeah, I like that, using the ID numbers. We haven't been doing that really. Are we okay to move on to talking about youth voice?
Sure.
Quickly. Amaris, would you mind, since you were there too, updating about like our conversation with the Hive meeting group?
Hive is starting to form a youth council, and I think they're using the momentum from the Hive meeting back in June here at the Garden, where they invited some students to come, and so they'll have those student members and open it up to a couple other students from other organizations. And I think they're still going to kick off like in a first official meeting. Is that right, Jennifer?
Yeah.
But we kind of sat in their table. They had their working group conversation, and we just kind of we added the idea that as part of one of the meetings or part of a conversation is to get student feedback on badges. Remind me, Jennifer, again, what month I think that they suggested?
They suggested October, so it sounded like they were trying to put together this teen council, but also need to make sure they have stuff for them to do. So they did recommend, because that we utilize this council rather than forming a whole separate group.
Which would be great, because that makes it really easy for us.
Yeah, and then they mentioned October at the earliest, I think, would be a point where we could go in and talk with them. I think, Amaris, do you remember, I feel like they said they were planning on meeting like twice a month for a block of time.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, that sounds about right.
But I think if they're interested, one task I think that we talked about asking them to help us with, in addition to just sort of giving feedback on badges, was designing ASCII art for badges.
Oh, right.
And I think they could have a lot of fun with that, too. Patsy didn't know what ASCII was.
So do people have thoughts about trying to get something together for October, or would we rather see if we could chat with them at a later month?
Well, what would we be asking them in October?
Yeah, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, we did actually, with the project exploration students in the first phase, during C-STEMBE, we did surveys on the technology that those students had.
Okay.
But I think one thing it would be interesting to know is what technologies students are using. But I don't know that this small group is going to be able to answer that question, because obviously if they're connected with the Hive, they probably have some kind of access to technology. I mean, maybe that's a big assumption I'm making, but...
I mean, I think that'll be still good to have, so that when we are asking them these other questions, like, well, we know what level at least they're coming from. And I think one of the questions, like going back to like the flyer or like the valuing, like I think asking them about thoughts about value would be important. It's coming from the students, like why would they value these digital badges?
That's a good point.
We could perhaps ask them to think like that the issue of future access might be an interesting discussion with them. Like, okay, so if you earn these badges now, and even if you're excited about them now, like, what would make you remember them when you need them? You know, what kinds of things, like, would you want an annual reminder? Hey, check out your badges. Like, what would make you, like, keep them sort of as part of the file of things that you go to when you're writing a resume, for example, or whatever, part of your portfolio?
Whereas my mom is more, you know, she sees the gray in things, and she can.
Yeah, sounds like there's some crossover with some other groups. Maybe we should see if anyone else has thoughts on.
Yeah, so maybe we can bring this up at the larger group meeting and just say there is this student group that Hive is forming. They're looking for projects or tasks or things to think about, and you know, to get on their calendar, this is what you need to do, and this is what we're thinking, and if other groups want to direct them in other, you know, have other tasks for them, to just let them know that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just having an agenda for a youth council, like what would the agenda look like? So even if it doesn't happen in October, at least we have this agenda ready for when it does happen.
Yeah. I like having them help with the ASCII badges though. Okay, any other thoughts on this one?
Sorry, guys, I'm trying to like find a quiet spot here. Sorry. Okay.
So last time we discussed potentially putting in for the next Hive RFP as a small grant to pilot doing a loan program with technology.
Yes.
So having programs actually have a few tablets or low-cost things that they, relatively low-cost technology equipment that they could loan out to other programs, or not to other programs, to students. With the students having to complete certain tasks. And I think, Saida, was it you that brought up about that you were looking into, there's another program where they give students like laptops. Oh no, it was iridescent.
It was iridescent, and they had a model where they loaned them the laptop, and then by doing X hours of coding, they essentially earned the laptop.
There's the Chicago Public Schools SES program, the Supplemental Education Services, like the after-school programs for students. You know, when the kids can sign up for tutoring. My kids had this at their school, so there's all this list of providers, like Brain Hurricane and who knows what, like all these like names of programs, and basically it's like similar, like after so many hours, I mean my son got a little tablet, like when he was done with the tutoring after school program, after so many hours of completion of that tutoring activity, you got to keep it.
So I think that's a great idea, and it definitely speaks to sort of the increasing access long term. However, it requires a constant funding stream.
Yeah.
And that would worry me a little bit. I think, like, I would love to do that, but I don't know who wants to take on that, funding that kind of program, because then you're giving away laptops.
Yeah.
And it's not like you buy 20 tablets and then you have them and you share them, and then 5 years from now you buy 20 more. Like, you're constantly. So I don't know how we fund that if we want.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting model. That's why I was just I was confusing also Jenna, but I put in the document, I dropped in like a blank from the last RFP Hive proposal, and I don't think it makes sense to like go through every section, but there's like the program overview and some of the goals I thought we might talk about today, unless you all have other thoughts on that stuff.
Well, I just wondered if there were, you know, some of those organizations that are doing that, you know, kids do, you know, certain hours or whatever, whatnot, that would be interested in adopting the C-STEMBE badges, and then having the badges as part of, like, you have, besides like hours, maybe the badges are like you have to earn a certain number of badges and then you get to keep it. But I don't know if there's any like middle school programs, because the ones that I can think of, they're like 5th grade and younger. But you know, that would be really neat if someone, rather than us taking on that model, you know, that model is still existing with their programs, and them just kind of like being interested in using the C-STEMBE badges as part of the earning badges, and then you get to keep this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not it. Could have a badge, like a technology badge, equipment badge.
Well, there is, maybe, isn't there a technology badge? Anyway. So, do we want to look at the proposal?
Yeah, sure. I thought this might just be a good way to get some thoughts down, specifics. Maybe even just starting with like section 6 as a project overview.
Yeah.
Where it asks for goals, outcomes, outputs.
Goals. Ugh. So, let's see, the goal, what are the goals? Increase
Okay, I'm gonna walk back to my office because I gotta get on the laptop now.
Access to technology.
I think one, I don't know how you would want to word this, but I would think that something along these lines would be to like investigate the impact of like giving students technology to use at home. Like how does that impact how they feel about the badging, or if they're more invested, or if they're using it more, things like that. Versus maybe we have some students that, or some programs that don't do it, or.
I like that question, Jennifer.
Because I was like, uh-oh, what's this about? And I'm like, oh, yeah. That's why I thought you were calling me. I said, that's why I thought you were calling me, because I was thinking
I think one of the goals also, which we talked a little bit about, and I think we need to sort of think about exactly what we want students to do, but to sort of increase student youth networks by having them communicate with each other, but also have them like tweet or blog or post on Facebook or whatever about, because presumably they're going to be using this technology to earn badges or to facilitate participation in the program within which they are earning badges. So we want them to kind of be vocal and social about what they're doing with badges.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that could be really cool if we've got, you know, youth who are participating at all of our organizations, and, you know, so these would even go to definitely some of the folks at California Academy of Sciences.
Yeah.
I know we'll have to see whether the American Museum of Natural History is more engaged. I did talk to Barry, and so he's going to, hopefully he'll be at the September meeting, but they were really swamped over the summer. So,
yeah.
But I think that would just be really cool to have the whole students like communicating across programs, which we don't really have a mechanism for them to do that right now.
Yeah, that's true. Even with this, I wonder like what that mechanism would be, but
yeah, I'm not sure if that's a blog or yeah, I don't know.
Or maybe it's like Twitter or something.
Right, like Twitter with a specific hashtag.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to, that's something that we really need to sort of think about. And maybe, well, I guess it's not going to be, I was going to say maybe we could ask this
The youth council, yeah.
But if they're not meeting until October, when is this due? Is it due in December again?
They haven't like released anything.
Oh, okay. Okay, so maybe October would be okay. Or we could come up with a couple of different ways and then say, here, these are the things we thought of. What do you think? To give them something to kind of think about.
Just jotting down some notes. Yeah. How about any other goals? I guess. I don't think we talked about anything else other than these three specifically.
I mean, it would, besides like this small youth network, it'll just also increase visibility of the programs and the badges for other kids who are following the tweets. You know,
Oh,
so I
yeah,
think
that's
that
true.
just everybody would just be able to see. And I remember Jennifer talking about like the whole pathway thing. They'll be able to see like, oh, maybe I want to do this program and that that one offers this badge, or maybe I do this program first and then go to this other program.
And
No, yeah.
Okay, I've gone through all my files. I don't have what you sent, and I can't find it. I'm sorry, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. I can. Are you talking about the checklist?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just let me see. The last.
I'll email it to you. I'll email it to you after this meeting. I'll dig it up and
Oh,
send
no,
you,
not the
send you
checklist.
what
Not, I'm sorry, not the checklist. The proposal that you were talking about, the other Jennifer. The goals.
Oh, there's a link in the chat.
Okay.
It should be under the equity working group in the Google Drive.
Equity working group. Okay, I'll have to like organize all of this.
Here, I'll just email it real quick. I just emailed the link to you, so you should be able to access it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
I guess there's the potential for like youth to be, for if they have the tablets during the program too, to be issuing each other badges. I know that's something that you can do with For All Systems.
These questions are really redundant.
Yeah. Yeah, we probably don't need to go through all of them, but in fact, depending on the grant request, we might not even need to answer some of these.
Some of them, yeah. One's fairly easy.
Yeah.
Tablets, some kind or other.
I mean, maybe it would be helpful to also lay out at the end of, if we happen to get money for this, or do it even on our own, like what is communicated out to everyone else, and like how will it look at the end, I suppose.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I know some things have like, I don't know, end up producing. I guess it's just a report. Like, how are we going to share out what we learned from this if we are doing it, or like suggestions for other groups or practices?
So I think there are a couple ways. I mean, one is we'll have the Twitter feed, right? So that will be essentially a product. But I think we also would want to create something that we could share with other groups that sort of outlined how we did it and what worked and what didn't. And it was my job to follow up with the New York Public Library because they actually do have a technology lending program, and I did get in touch with someone there, but I haven't followed up, so I just re-put that on my list to do. But sort of thinking about how this kind of program works and what the challenges are and how it impacted programs. So that one of those things, so the investigating the impact of technology access on valuing badges, I mean, we could also add on program participation.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to, I mean, I think the hardest part of this proposal is going to be figuring out how the system actually works. Like, who's going to do what and how are they going to be organized and managed. And I think we talked at the last large group meeting about having a few that live at different organizations. And then rather than sort of at a higher level, C-STEMBE, but we'd say, okay, this season Project Exploration gets 3 to lend, the Garden gets 3, Anti-Cruelty Society gets 3, and then, next season we shift them around, and the Adler gets 3, and like we have to figure out like how we're gonna work that.
And figure out like also which students
get
them. Like, do they have to apply? Are they randomly selected? How is that process as well?
And maybe it's different at every place, and we can sort of see what worked.
Yeah. But I do think we should have sort of a standard like lending protocol, But yeah, then how each organization distributes them to students, I would think, could be up to that individual organization, sort of what the criteria are. Yeah, okay. So, timeline. What do we think in terms of the timeline? I mean, I would think if we did one of the smaller grants, I think it's the Spark. Is it the Spark grants that are the 25,000?
I don't remember the names. I know there's one that's like up to 5 or 10.
I think we want 25. If we want to buy enough, okay, Raphael's saying there's a $10,000 level. Do we want to do 10, or do we want to ask for more? I mean, I don't know. We can ask Maria, I suppose, and see if she has any guidance.
Yeah. So I think the 10,000. It's basically like there's not any requirements for number of students, and it's truly just a pilot. You don't even need to do anything with students specifically. That would, even just 10,000, if we're looking at just the equipment and not like staff time pieces, that could be up to about 40 tablets.
Wow, that's a lot of tablets. That's true.
But then if we want to include, things like staff time, obviously that decreases it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then I think the next level up is 3 to 6 months.
Right. I think
25,000.
Yeah, I think this
students involved.
I think this Spark is the 25,000, and that's 6 months. Because that's what we did for the C-STEMBE, the first one.
Oh, Right.
So, but that would cover some staff time. It would be nice, I think, to have some. I mean, and I don't know if it's staff time or I'm not sure, but I feel like we're going to need some coaching for those students, at least initially, in terms of what we want them to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhat of a youth council, you know, that there'll have to be some kind of in-person meeting at one point
Right.
too, and I'm just trying to think of like number of students, and food. Students will eat food.
Right, yes, food.
But like the 10 students, would that sound about right? In terms of like number of students who are part of this group.
Yeah, I think if we really wanted to keep it pilot and just do it with, 10 or 15 students, then we could do the Glimmer grant, because the 10,000, if we're only buying, 15 tablets or whatever, or 20 even. But I think we also have to remember that this is national, and so we have to figure out a way for those, and maybe it's via Hangout. And we connect students in our different organizations via Hangout, and that's how they have their meetings. Because we don't have a lot. I mean, we only have 2 national partners, if you don't count Iridescent, which is national, but it has a local office. But I do want to make sure that if we're going to do this, we do kind of make sure that we include everyone.
Yeah, definitely. So what are you, Amaris, can you explain what you're thinking of with a council? Or are you talking about like a focus group type of situation?
Because if these students have a role, like about either sharing their experience, I think we'll probably be asking for some input from them. So it's kind of like sharing their voice. And I don't know, I just wondered then too, if we wanted to give out more, maybe there is and this was just like my thought about like the separate group of those who are actually have this role, and then those who are just kind of like doing the program and and responding to those tweets, but not necessarily this other role of this council that I just kind of threw up the name out.
Right. So what you're saying is that there might be 2 levels of engagement. So there's the one level where we're just lending out the laptops, they use them for the program, and they earn badges.
And it'll be neat to see like whether they did, without having an assignment of them like engaging. We'll see, did they respond? Did they view their badges? Did they share them? Did they tweet about it? And then there'll be the other group where we actually assign that role to them. And
then maybe those 5 or however many they are, those are the ones who they fulfill their tasks and they get the laptop. So there's there's like a lending component to it that we can see how it works, and then there's maybe an additional engagement component that we pilot test it, we give them the laptops to see sort of for their help in pilot testing, essentially. And then we could roll that out larger scale where we're not giving away laptops, but we've done this pilot test, and so we know what the engagement part looks like, so that then we can sort of scale it up and manage it in a way that we don't give away the laptops, but we kind of know how it works ahead of time, so we know the kinds of things we can ask students to do that they will actually do, that they will enjoy doing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so that sounds... I mean, so in terms of like the Glimmer and the Spark, the Glimmer one has that intention of like rolling up, so maybe that would work if it starts with a smaller group. Do you think that having like that incentive for the smaller group, though, of getting the laptop or the tablet afterwards is going to affect their engagement?
Oh, totally.
The rest of it. So how would we like? Wouldn't that like sort of warp what we see happening.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and then that's what I was thinking. Like there would be another group, but we kind of, I mean, we wanted some of this to be youth driven, and like and without giving them that role, like it might not happen. So that's just kind of like my thought about that. Like, and I think the students would really like that, having that role, and just kind of like leading on projects like that.
Or so here's another option. Rather than giving every single student a laptop, maybe we just do the regular lending. Say you're getting this tablet. This is your role. But by helping with this pilot test, you go into a drawing to win one. So we're only giving away one. There's a little bit of external motivation, but it's not sort of that specific. I don't know. Because I feel like they're helping us pilot test this thing. But I don't know. Maybe just getting the laptop is enough. I don't know. I see your point, though, Jen, about sort of warping it. If we're going to do this, then we're not getting a real accurate picture of what it would look like sort of as a regular program.
Well, maybe we can think about it for a while, and I know we're getting close to time on our meeting time. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess, yeah, it'd be good to hear like what other, if you were able to reconnect with the Newark. Like,
I will do that, yes.
I mean, we might even feel like here we have a number of tablets. We might even play around this fall with just trying to loan them out and developing a system around that as a trial anyway, was something we were talking about. But
Yeah.
so, let's see. Oh, going next. Do we want to try to do an in-person meeting at some point since we're all in town?
Yeah, we can do that.
Do you want to try for the next time or wait till a little bit later in the year?
I don't know. I
I
think
think the next time is fine.
yeah, it's going to be the yeah. Let's do that. Let's do next time. That's October 1st.
Does anyone want to host or? Would be
Well,
okay?
you guys mentioned coming here maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me just check to make sure the conference room is available, but it usually is. So. October 1st?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, the conference room is taken up, but let me check the auditorium. Yeah, it's free. Would you guys like to do it here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That'd be great. And then until then, so I have just from a couple notes I took that Saito was going to try to connect with someone from CSEL about the CPS records piece.
Yeah.
Sounds like Jennifer's going to reconnect about those things, and I can, Race and I can continue to touch base about the flyer and try to get something together. It looks like you have a good outline out, so I'll take a look at it too and see what I have to add in. Anything else from people?
I think that's good. I think we have our marching orders.
And then we'll bring up at the next big meeting about the youth council, the Hive Youth Council, and maybe get an agenda together for something we could bring to them, even if it's not in October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.